Hello and welcome to Sparkle. This is a slightly longer tutorial designed for beginners who are venturing out into the world of website building. It will cover the basics of the software and will give you the tools and knowledge to build your first website. We'll also look briefly at the important parts of the interface to get you more familiar with the workflow. So let's have a look at the finished site. The design of this website is not important. Indeed, it's not what I would design for a veterinary practice website. But it will show you that without a single line of code, you can easily build and publish a beautiful website for yourself or a customer. The site contains a home page with a header, a middle section, and a footer. It contains a Meet the Team page, which makes use of layout blocks. It also has a gallery page, which shows you how you can easily insert a gallery of images with ease. There is also a services page, which I've purposely left empty, as by the time we get to it, I will have covered the basics that you need to know. Plus, there are many other tutorials at the Sparkle website that can take you further. So let's get into it. Let's head over to Sparkle and start with a clean page. Let's have a quick look around the interface. So on the left-hand side you have your page navigation, you have your layers palette, and at the base you can add or delete pages. What is a layers palette? Every time you add an object to your page, it becomes a layer, which gives you easy access to it when necessary. Along the top you have your tools. The most common tools are already shown, but clicking the plus icon gives you access to the rest of them. You can customize this area to suit your needs. And to the right-hand side you have your inspector window. This is contextual. It will display the relevant tools you need depending on what you have selected on the canvas, which, by the way, is the big bit in the middle or your page. You may see grid lines on your page. These are there to help you place objects accurately, but you can change the properties of the grid here. We'll leave it as it is. So that fundamentally is the interface. You'll get used to it as we go along in this tutorial. Now you'll remember, if we head back to the website briefly, that the home page has a header, a central information section, and finally a footer. Let's start with the header. So we'll go over to Sparkle. So the header is an area which can contain several objects, usually grouped so they can be repeated throughout the website. The header is an important area of your site, as it's the first part of the site that people will see when they land on your page. So back to the header, I have used a large background image, a logo, a strapline, a menu, and a call to action button. That's 5 items, so let's place them on the page. I'll start with a wide box. I go to my add menu and add a wide box. This is similar to a normal box, but extends past the page edges and fills the entire width of the browser window. I'll move it to the top of the page and I'll stretch it out a little bit. The inspector palette has now changed, allowing me to format the wide box. I'll insert an image I've prepared previously, and I do this by going to the content button under the fill and switching it to image. Then I can click add an image, browse to my image, and you can see it's roughly the right shape for a header. Now the image has been put in the header and clearly it's too big for the box. So I'm going to select the stretch box and I'm also going to keep it on fill because I want it to fill the entire box. But I'm also going to align it to the right just to move it over a little bit. In the inspector palette there's a tab called Arrange, and if you click on that you can set the exact height of the box you want. So I'm going to type 380 pixels, and it will make the box that deep from the top of the page. The next thing I want to add is the logo. So here I'm going to select the image tool, and it places an image box on the page for me. I'm going to go back to my style menu in the inspector palette, and I'm going to select bitmap, which is what I want. It's an image. I'm going to click add, navigate to my logo, and select it. Again, I'm stretching it to fit the box. If I select fill, it will fill the box as much as it can in one direction, but I want it to fit. So that's the logo done. The next item is the strap line. This is the text box. I click on text box, and here I can start typing where animals get hugged a lot. I'm going to select my text, and now I'm going to format it in the inspector palette. So the text I want to use for this is Quigley. I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to click on the color palette, and I'm going to make it white and left aligned, and that's about where we want it at the moment. Now I'm just going to put it over the image so I can see it. The fourth item I want to put on the page is the call to action button. Once again, I can go up to my menu under the plus icon, and I can insert a button. And we'll just make it a little bit bigger so we can see what we're doing. And once again, the inspector palette has changed so I can stylize my button. And here I'm just going to make the button the color we want it. Perhaps this time I'm going to switch on the border and give it a black border. We can click black there. Under the styling, I'm going to make them have rounded corners. So we'll just increase those a little bit maybe. Now I'm going to put my text on the button, and I'm going to say call for appointment. Under the font, I'm going to make that Lustria. I'm going to increase its size because I want it nice and big for a call to action button. Color the text in white. Now let's just look at if I select the button, let's look at the base of this inspector window, and you can see there's a mouse hover and a mouse clicked area. So when the user enters over the button, we want that to have the background as white. We'll keep the border as black, and we'll have the text in black too. And then when the mouse is clicked, again, we'll leave it as white, black, and black for the border and the text. So that's the button stylized. Now we want to give it that call to action. So let's go to the on click section of the inspector, and we'll say call phone number, and we'll put that phone number directly in, and we'll just make up a number here, and that's the number the computer will try and dial. So that's the fourth item. The last item we want to insert is the navigation menu. Now Sparkle makes this really easy based on your needs. I know how many pages I'm going to have in this website, and this is one way to add your menu. Click the plus button and add a menu under the navigation and forms section, and Sparkle puts the menu on your page for you. Now you can see it's one tab because we only have one page. It's actually a link to this page. Now for me to build the menu, I need to put my other pages in. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go to the page button at the top of the page in the tools palette and just say add page. And on the left hand side you can see it's added a second page. And I'm going to click at the bottom of that and say our team, as this is going to be the team page. Now I'm going to add another page, and this one is going to be our gallery. And that's going to be a page of images. It's going to be like a pinboard of the animals they've treated. And I would just add one more page, not because we're going to do anything with it, but because I want to show you how the menu looks. We'll go down to the base here and we can add a page here in exactly the same way. And what I've just done here is I've duplicated the page above it, so it's called our gallery 1. I could have just added a page there as well. So let's just rename this one Services. So we've now got 4 pages. 3 of them are blank, obviously, but the home page now has 4 linked buttons on the page. And again, what I'd like to do is just stylize these, and I'll do that very quickly while fast forwarding. Okay, so we have our elements for our header. Let's get them in position. Okay, so they're in position. What I'm going to do now is select all by pressing Command A on the keyboard, or I can drag my mouse over everything, and I can right click and select group. Now the reason I've grouped it is I want it to act as one element. Let's go to the Layers panel and we can see what's going on. We now have a group and inside are my 5 elements. Let's name the group and we'll call this group Header. And actually we're going to name the other elements. Naming your objects gets really useful when the site gets bigger and you could possibly have hundreds if not thousands of objects to find. Okay, let's take a look at this in Safari to see what it looks like. Click the Preview button and select Open Live Preview. Your website will open in your default browser. There's one more thing I want to do there. I want to blur the background to make the foreground elements pop a bit more. So back in Sparkle, I can, in my Layers menu, I can select the background and I can click on the blur box in the inspector panel and we'll just give it a slight blur, maybe 8 pixels, something like that, just to make the front elements pop a bit more. And again, we can preview that and that looks much better. I'm going to take the underline off the text because we don't want that. And in fact, I might make the text a little bit bigger. There we go, so we now have our header. We're on the Layers panel on the left hand side and here's our Pages panel, but you can also show both, so let's click on the icon next to those. Now I have both columns and I can select a page to work on and I can see what's on that page. That's a very useful visual clue as to what's going on. Now I want the header to appear on all the pages so that I can navigate from any page to any page. So to do this, I'm going to select the group and you can click once on the group and you can see it's highlighted in the Layers panel here, so you know you've selected the whole group. I'm going to move over to the Inspector panel, back to the Arrange tab, and I'm going to say Show on All Pages. I'm going to click that and now you can see in my Pages panel that the header has actually appeared on every page. So that's our header completed. Let's now work on the middle section of this home page. Looking at the finished site, we have 6 elements in the middle section of the page. 2 titles, 2 images, and 2 text blocks. So I'm going to put these in place and fast forward as all these elements have already been covered. So there's our 6 elements in place. Now the last part of the page is the footer. Again, this is a design idea. Let's just have a quick look at it. The footer is the base of the page. And again, it's a design area that is common on websites, but it's not necessary at all if you don't want it. It is, however, a useful area of the website for holding multiple objects for customers to navigate to, and also for general information such as addresses, company details, and the like. So let's build the footer using another wide box and just some text boxes with links. I'll fast forward the build and then show you how to set up the links. Now before I carry on, in the inspector panel we have this little tab called Insert Icon. And I'm going to press on that and I'm going to type in the search button Facebook. And it comes up with some Facebook option graphics for me. So I can just click that in and then I'm going to press 2 spaces and I'm going to insert another icon. This time I want Instagram. We can click on our icon that we want. And I'm going to click another couple of spaces and insert one last one called X, and we'll put X in as well. And I can just highlight those and make those bigger. We'll just get rid of those full stops. I clicked too quickly. And again, we'll just lay this out as we want it roughly. We'll get these all lined up at the top. And we'll reduce this size. And then I'm going to bring the page up to the bottom. And again, I'm going to right click and I'm going to group these items. Again, you've got another group here which we'll call footer, just so we can find it quickly. But actually we want it to go underneath the header. In fact, we want to put those 2 items right at the top of the page like that. So now I have a group, I can select the group, go to my Arrange tab and say Move with Page Bottom. This allows me to increase or decrease the page length and the footer will stay with it. And you can see that here. If I move the page length, the footer will stay with it. Okay, let's quickly talk about the links. If I want to take the customer to our online shop, that may be an external link or an internal link to the website. I highlight the line, I go to my style menu in the inspector and I say on click, go to external link, and I type in what that link might be. We'll just put shopify.com because that's where the shop is. And we can also open that in a new page so that they don't lose where they are on the site. Another one might be to an internal page. So we'll highlight that line and say, go to a page in this website. Now you may have a page in the website that isn't on the menu, for example, but you may want access to it. And at the moment, I'm going to put that to the services page in the on-click section. So that's how you set up links. The same goes with the cookie policies and the privacy policies. You can either have those pop up in a window, you can allow a PDF to open, or you can download a file if that's what you want them to do. Over on the right hand side, if I highlight the Facebook icon, I can take them to Facebook, which is simply an external link. All manner of things are possible in your footer, and it's one of those things that will appear hopefully on each page, and the way you do that is, as you've done before, go to the Arrange menu and Show on All Pages. Now you can see we have all of that in our Pages panel on the left hand side. So if we now go to Preview, we can have a look at the live page and you can see it's all up and running as it should be. We have our menus, which we tweaked to look like they do. We have our central elements and we have our links at the bottom in our footer. And if I click on our team, it will take me to that page or our gallery or back home. So we've completed the first page. Now the next 2 pages are identical in terms of the header and the footers. So it's just the middle sections I'd like to show you in terms of what's available. And on the Our Team page, I'm going to look at layout blocks And on the Our Gallery page, I'm going to look at how to include many images in a really nice portfolio. As I said, we're going to leave the services page for now. That was just put in to show you the menu and how it's constructed. Here we are on our team page, and contrary to what you think I'm going to do, the images of the staff will in fact be buttons and not image boxes. There are two reasons for this. One, you can hide and show text with the button, and two, the button acts as a trigger to open the layout block we are going to use for the bio text. Let's create the first button, and we'll just resize it to fit an image. Let's type in the person's name. And before we do anything, we'll just stylize the text to how we want to see it when it shows. Okay, and we will make the text transparent for now. Now, at the bottom of the menu, there is a mouse hover section. And under that, I want to make the text color white. So as I hover over the image, the text color will turn white. At the moment it's transparent, remember? We'll also, after the mouse is clicked, leave the text color white as well. Now let's put a picture in. Under the background section, don't worry about the fill color, we're going to change that to image, and we'll add an image, and we'll add Emma's picture, and again we will stretch it and make it fill. So there we have our button. Now we want to create the text that will appear when we click on the picture. And to do that, we're going to insert a layout block. And the layout block is very much like a wide box. It covers the browser window edge to edge. But don't worry about that now. We're not interested in the layout block being visible or functional. The only reason we've got the layout block and not just the text is that we can hide and show a layout block. So with the layout block selected, I'm going to insert a text block, and I'm going to align it right at the top of the layout block, and I'm just going to make it the same shape as the image above it. Now I'm going to insert some text into the layout block. And again, we'll format that text, which it has done. Now I can make the layout block itself transparent, and you're left with just the text sitting there underneath the image. Maybe we'll have a little bit less text. And I'm going to keep the layout block to the same height as the text block. I'm also going to click the initially hidden button, so that when the page loads, you can't see the text. Now let's set the trigger. The image is the trigger, and on click in the inspector window, we're going to say layout block visibility. And we're going to select the layout block we want to use, which is layout block 4. Now this is a good time to rename everything so that when you've got 20 of these on the page, you know which layout block is which. So I'm going to call this Emma Rickson layout block, and you can see it contains the text here. You should even do Emma bio text. So let's go back to the button. We've chosen the layout block we want to hide and show. Your options are to hide, show, or toggle. Well, we use toggle. I want to make sure that all the other bios or layout blocks, if you like, are closed when this one is open. And the animation I want to use is a fade, perhaps for maybe 0.4 of a second. Now let's take a quick look at that in the preview. So here's our image. The layout block is hidden. I'll hover over the layout block and the name pops up, and I can click and the text appears. If I click again, the text disappears, and once I move off it, the name disappears. Now all you've got to do is to do that for the rest of the staff. And the way you do that with layout blocks is you do one under the other. So let's just repeat that for the second one. I'm going to option click and hold shift down, and I'm going to create my second person. The first thing I'm going to do is replace the image in the inspector panel, and we'll put Jeanette. We need to highlight the text and write Jeanette Bryant. Everything else will be set the same for colours because it's a duplicate of the original one. Now, the trigger for Jeanette will still be the layout block that we've got here because it's a duplicate of this button. So what we need to do is to create our second bio in a second layout block. I'm going to hold the option button down and I'm going to select the layout block to duplicate it. Put them where you want it. Now you want the second block to kiss and touch the first one. I'm going to highlight the text box in this layout block and I'm going to move it to under the second image, and you can see the green line and the grid showing up that I'm aligned. Obviously you'll change your text, but the most important thing is to swap the trigger over. So I'm going to select my button and I'm going to go back to my layout block visibility on click, and I'm going to choose Emma Rixson LB copy, and I'm actually going to rename this to Jeanette layout block, and obviously the text will change as well. Jeanette bio text. So you can see as you go along, it's very quick, as you go along you're naming everything so that you can find it very easily. Okay, let's preview this. Now you can see I've got both images up, the name comes up for each person, and as I click, one opens, and as I click, one closes and one opens. And you literally keep going with this until your page is done. So I don't need to do that now. Let's go back to Sparkle. So we'll come back to our home page and we can grab a title and some text and copy it, and we'll put it on the second page. If you paste it, it will paste it in exactly the same place as it is on the home page. So things really do align very nicely when you want them to. Now I'm just going to simply resize this text box to across the page, and then I can move all of this stuff down under it. So I've got a little bit of an introduction. Meet our team. So I'm going to move those over to align them. Then I'm going to shift this text over to align it, and then I'm going to shift this text over to align it. There we go. And you basically keep adding that down the page until you've got as many people as you like. If you've got 5 staff across the top and you want to put another layer in of staff, I can option, shift and move those. And because these are hidden, the gap between this row and this row, let's just change their pictures and I'll show you what I'm going to do. The gap between this row of images and this row of images will be the gap between the bottom of the last layout block and the gap between the first layout block and the first row of images. So let me show you what that looks like. There you go. And don't forget these are set also for the same layout block, so they're going to appear above. So what you want to do is to be able to copy these layout blocks and go underneath this row of images. So you keep adding and adding and adding until you've got all your staff members in place. It's as simple as that. It's a really effective page to use. Let's now move on to our gallery page. Now in our gallery page, if we go back to our original site, you can see I've got a little bit of text to introduce it, and I've got images which I can click on. I've got arrows so I can move between the images, and I've got a little close button in the top corner. I can click on any image at the time. So it's a really nice gallery to have, very easy to create. So let's go back to Sparkle and create it. Now I'm on my gallery page, and again I can take some introductory text, copy it from the previous page, and we can just paste it onto our gallery page, and it pastes it in exactly the right place. So we've got a little bit of an introduction there. Now let's add our gallery. Back to the plus button in the Tools palette, and we will click on Image Video Grid. It will just put in a template grid for you to start working with. So the first thing I want to do is to add my images. There are two ways of doing this. I can click Edit in the Inspector panel. I can add image video, and I can go to the folder with all my images. I can select them all and press Select. And it will increase the number of cells in my image grid to the number of images I selected. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing this is to insert your image grid, go to your Finder, go to the folder where your images are, select all your images and drag them from the Finder to the image well on the Inspector menu. And it puts the images into the grid as before. Now I want to style the grid as I want it. And the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the blue background of the grid box. So I'm just going to go to the background section and select the transparent version. And I want to do the same for the grid cells. So basically on the grid cells, I've selected my grid, and you can see it's selected at the bottom here and at the top. I'm going to click again to select a cell, and you can see here the fill is this blue, which I'm going to now turn transparent. And that selects all the grids. The next thing I want to do is to have 4 images across and 3 rows down. So I've got 12 images. And to do that, I'm going to go to my background and I'm going to go to my grid section, and I'm going to make the elements, the grid cells, I'm going to make them 250 pixels across and 250 pixels high, so they're square. I'll keep the width between them at 20. Now they look a bit random because we've got portrait and landscape, so I'm going to turn them to fill each square, and I can do that by either selecting each image. So I'm going to click once, I'm going to click twice, and I'm going to click 3 times to select the image. And I'll do this quickly. So now I have my grid set as I want them. So I'm going to select the actual grid itself, and then I'm going to click again to select the cells. And under the cells I can now add a border, and we'll make the border black, and I'm going to round the corners. So all your normal stylizing can take place on your grid. And you can see now that I have my grid set up. If we preview this, you can see it's all set up here. If I click on an image, it expands, and I've got my arrows. It's just loading. So all my images are working. And basically we've created our grid. I can now close up the base. Remember, the footer is going to follow the base of the page. And we have our website. Now, there's a huge amount more to Sparkle than I've shown you here, but there is enough here to get you going to create a website. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there are many more videos available at the Sparkle website. So go take a look and see what you can create. And remember, you won't have to learn any coding to put your website together. Now in part 2 of this tutorial, we'll put together the mobile version of the site. In the meantime, thanks for watching.